Hey, this is Ask the Pastor. This is where I take questions from the internet and I do my best to answer every question I get sent. Here's a question that we're talking about today. It just says, what is your view of creation? I'm not sure exactly what this means, but I think I have a vague understanding. I think you're talking about creationism. So I always try not to correct or to spell check the questions I get sent, because what you sent is what you sent and it's not up to me to fix it or change it. But when I talk about what is my view of creation, creation, everything God created is the heavens and the earth. So I think it's pretty cool. I mean, creation is huge, and I don't love the mosquitoes part of it. But I think most of the people who use that term, I believe in creation, they're talking about the belief that that God created the heavens and the earth, and that therefore that's what we should be teaching in schools about how the earth works and where it came from. I think that's kind of the fairest summary of what it means. And so I'm what we would call a theistic evolutionist. So I'm sort of in the middle between the two camps in the creation evolution debate. If we've got on one side of the camp the atheistic evolutionists who say, I believe the world came into being and it wasn't guided by anything. It was a pure and total accident, and only physical processes were responsible for everything we see around us, and those physical processes themselves were not caused or designed or engineered or created by anything. They just happen to be what they are. That would be kind of one side of the debate. Maybe we'll call it the far left side of the debate. I don't even know what side of the screen this is on, because it always mirrors everything twice, and then when I edit it, it mirrors it again. It's bonkers. And then over here, on the far other side of me, so if I'm in the middle between these two guys, over here is the belief that God made the world and everything in it, perhaps with the appearance of age, perhaps 6,000 years ago, goes one particular very conservative, should I use the word blowhard? Commentator, who kind of talks about creationism, that there is absolutely no truth to the Darwinian theory of evolution, that microevolution can happen, things can adapt, and dogs can be darker and lighter in skin color, but macroevolution, which is not a category that science ever uses, cannot happen. Changing between species or changing between kinds cannot happen. Only God's design can ever change anything, and the things that God created are durable and they're going to last, and science has nothing to say about it, or at least the modern scientific community. The modern scientific community is totally bought and sold by the devil, and we can do our own separate private science, and it's better and truer because it's based in biblical truth. And I'm sitting here in the middle. And what I believe is that the Darwinian theory of evolution, Darwin's theory, is a great theory. It's a great theory, and I use that word theory, and that's such a touchy word for both sides, but that's exactly what it is. A theory does not mean what this side wants to pretend it means, which means a wild guess. Right? A theory is not a wild guess. A scientific theory is a very well-established way of doing science that has been held up experimentally over and over again. It's a base from which we work. But it's also not what this side wants to pretend it is, which is truth. A theory is not the truth, because the point of a scientific theory is that it's supposed to get better. right? Like it's supposed to, we have the theory and we work from it, and it's a base from which we work from, and we begin to build upon it, and it grows and it adapts and it changes, which should sound familiar, right? Like somebody who believes in Darwinism, the belief of like change over time and adaptation and survival of the fittest, that's exactly what we do in science. So Darwin, for instance, had no understanding of something like the DNA sequence, something like mutation. These are all additions to what has become the theory of evolution. And that's a good thing, right? Because that's the way we do science. The way we do science is we have an idea and we test it, and if the test works, then we keep that idea and we hold it more closely, and if the test doesn't work, then we abandon some part of the idea and we design another test. And the evolutionary framework works great. It's super good for doing science. It helps us to understand ourselves better. It helps us to understand the animal kingdom better. It does all sorts of fantastic stuff. So it's a good theory, and we should keep working on it, and we should keep making it better and better, because that's what we do with science. We shouldn't worship it. We shouldn't write it down and make it holy writ, right? And nobody should want us to. What we should be doing is like using it to do good science. And so if you're in public schools and you're learning biology, then you need to learn the way biology is done, right? You need to learn one of the dominant theories that informs our practice of biology. And that's not a threat to the truth that God created the heavens and the earth. God did create the heavens and the earth, but I believe that God created the heavens and the earth in such a way that they evolve. That God was present in making the earth in such a way, in designing the physical laws, in giving the first life the tools it needed to be able to evolve, to be able to have upgrades, and to be the way that that we observe it, that we see it. There's a guy I really admire. His name is Johannes Kepler. Kepler joined with Tycho Brahe, and they became like the first modern scientific team, right? It was theory and experimentation, and they worked together. But Kepler was a monk. He was a Christian monk, and he believed God wrote two books. He wrote the book of Scripture, and he wrote the book of creation. Or Calvin would have called that special revelation and general revelation. And so one way that we learn about God, we learn about who God is by reading the book God wrote, and by reading Scripture, which ironically I'm pointing to it. Look at that in the background. Another way that we learn about God is we read the other book God wrote. We look at the other thing God made, which is you and me and the earth. And we study the earth, and we learn what's true, and we learn what's real, and we learn what God made. And there's no reason any of this should lead us to believe that anything that we have long confessed and long believed about our place with God and about God's place with the universe and how involved he was in creating it is wrong. There are some ways in which perhaps certain readings of certain scriptures fall away. When we study the book of creation, we all of a sudden realize like, oh, hey, what we were thinking about the four corners of the earth, turns out that's not literal. And that's great. That's a wonderful thing. That's the book of creation helping us read the book of Scripture and do a better job at it. I love that. I want more of that to happen. And there may be some ways in which our knowledge of Scripture and our knowledge of faith helps us to inform some of the things that science tells us. And we might say, hey, science is having this trouble with this thing called a punctuated equilibrium, where they realize like once every couple million years, evolution takes a giant leap, and they don't know what could cause it. I have an idea what might cause it. If I think there's a God out there who has an ability to like sometimes kickstart things, but I'm going to hold that idea tentatively, and I'm going to allow those two to work together. That's where I'm at. Where are you? I hope you can discuss with me and tell me more about what you're thinking. You can leave comments, you can make videos, and we can talk more about it. But if you like my answer, I hope you'll share it. And if you've got your own question, I hope that you'll ask it, and I will make a video just for you. Meanwhile, these guys are other videos you can watch. Thank you, and God bless.